and this is the Agegroup Multisport Podcast with me, Richard Conway. This is a platform for Agegroup multisport athletes to showcase their journeys. Welcome along to episode 75. Hope everything's going well in your world. How's your training going? And some people must have been getting some open water swimming practice in pretty early this year, as we were at Western Park. Mrs. C was taking part in the duathlon qualifier there on the Sunday last weekend, May the 13th, May the 14th, and didn't realise that the same venue was being used on the Saturday for Xterra, which is the off-road triathlon championships, and Alistair Brownlee was there. We rocked up just as the trophies were getting presented, and there he was, top of the podium, receiving his medal. Alongside him on the podium was episode 69 guest Ben Goodfellow. Ben finished 5th overall in the elite, so well done, Ben. It was nice to see you, even though I never got a chance to catch up and speak. But what a fantastic place to hold a multi-sport event, and that's pretty much what it was, because on the Sunday, Mrs. C was, like I said, racing duathlon, European qualifier, age group, and they also had super sprint triathlon, a sprint triathlon going at the same time, and it was well organised to get all those events out without any major incidents that I heard of anyway. Speaking to a few of the triathletes who'd been in the pond, lake, it was a bit grim, especially after quite a few had churned it up already. It wasn't very nice. A bit duckweedy and a bit, not good. And the other thing that was mentioned was the transition, which was set up way down on the grass by the lake for good reason, because it needed to be. And that meant that all the triathletes and the duathletes had a good 400 metre run up a grassy field onto the top road, where they then could get onto the bikes and do laps of the bike course, which was enclosed, so that was good. That was really nice and safe. But it was a bit manic, because there was obviously duathletes on the course already. The triathletes and the super sprint triathletes were then joining in, and like I say, I didn't hear of any accidents, but it was very, very busy. And then they had to get off the bikes, dismount, and then run all the way back down again. So, but Mrs. C said it was one of the best ones that she'd ever done, so that's high praise indeed. And along the way, I managed to catch up with a few of the age group athletes that have been on the podcast. I met the last episode we had, which was 74, featuring Robert Myler. He came down from Scotland to race with Ross Crombie, teammates up there in Scotland, and Ross appeared on episode 48. And they travelled all the way down from Scotland to try and qualify, and I believe that they both did. So congratulations to those guys. Episode 17's Karina Kaufman was also racing to qualify, and I believe she was successful also. So it was really nice to watch Mrs. C race and see her do so well, and also the guys that have been on the podcast, and have a chat to them after they'd raced. So that was really nice to catch up. And on to today's guest, who was also at Xterra on the Saturday racing. His first mountain bike race, I believe. And that's Craig Lane from Hull. And Craig got in touch via Instagram and said he would like to come and share his story. And yeah, it's a story definitely worth sharing, as everybody's that's been on has been. And basically, Craig didn't really do anything as a kid, didn't enjoy sport whatsoever, and was just busy with life and with work, running his own business as he gets into. And it was a health scare that actually got him into the gym and got him started on the way to doing some health and fitness and trying to improve his life. And yeah, ends up being a coach. So it's a small world, it's a funny world, and you never know where the paths are going to take you. So that's all coming up. I hope you enjoyed Craig's story. It was really great to chat to him. Yeah, loads of different things that you'll be inspired by from Craig's story. So at the weekend we were watching the Triathlon World Series. They were over there in Yokohama in Japan, and for the ladies it was really, really fantastic to watch Sophie Caldwell come out on top, and she just looked so good. Unfortunately, Georgia Taylor-Brown, by her standards, didn't have the best of races. I mean, she still finished 8th, but we expect her to be podium places most of the time, and the last couple of races that she's entered, it's just not happened for her. But it'll come back. She'll be back up there. And in the men's, Hayden Wilde just absolutely had a great swim. Usually he's behind on the swim, and he managed to get out in the front pack. He pretty much bossed the bike, and then on the run, nobody could stay with him. He was absolutely flying. I can't wait for him and Alex Yee to be racing against each other again, because he is running really, really well. And he dominated. So well done, Hayden Wilde. Fantastic race. 2 good races. Really enjoyed them both. Giro started and just been glued to the set. It's been incident and accident after one day to the next, and the weather's been atrocious. It's been, I think that Italy have had the most rainfall in history, and it's just not been great. But yeah, so that's all going on. Geraint Thomas, the British rider, he took the pink jersey off Remco Evenepoel, who sadly had to go home because he had COVID, as quite a lot of the riders have had. And so he's just relinquished as we recording this, actually. He just decided that he didn't want to be in pink anymore, and he gave it up. He had, I think the guy who took it over, he had 18 minutes on, and so he's just give up the yellow jersey, the pink jersey. So more of the Giro to come. That'll fill my afternoons up for the next week. A couple of events going on this weekend. There's the box end qualification for the standard try for Worlds, and there's the Southport Triathlon qualifier sprint distance for the Worlds this weekend. So if you're racing in that, good luck. Hope you smash it and get your spot. Next weekend at Darley Moor, there's the second European duathlon qualifier, and me and Mrs. C and a couple more of our team, Ros and Phil, who are with us in Italy, and also Steve Hunt and Joe Hunt, are going to be there racing. So it's going to be a good weekend for us, just as a group, as a team. Mrs. C's just done the 3 peaks today, so she's already qualified, so the pressure's off for her, which is probably just as well, because her legs will probably be in bits after walking for, I'm not sure how many hours she did today, but 9 or 10, I think. But yeah, looking forward to that. Not sure my level of fitness, to be honest, after my Achilles issue. Was on the treadmill today, and it's still painful, but I got up to some sort of speed. But we'll just have to see how we go. See if we can get round first, and then see where that leaves us. Podcast for you to look out for, and I can recommend on the How They Train podcast. He's teamed up with Hayden Wilde, and he's pretty much producing a Hayden Wilde's triathlon show. And listened to the first one, and Hayden and his brother were on, and they were discussing his performance in Yokohama and all things short course triathlon, really. Good listen, enjoyed it, and looking forward to the next one. Noticed that on the Simon Ward podcast, he had Donald Brooks, who was on our podcast a few months ago. Didn't bother listening to it because I know Donald's story because I've interviewed him. But interesting to see these podcasts picking up some age group stories now. There's Simon Ward podcast started doing it, and also the Oxygen Addict. He started putting some age groupers on, and British Tri now have got a podcast, and they're starting to put some age group athletes on there also. So age group athletes are starting to get some recognition, which is really nice. So long may it continue. Maybe we've set a trend, who knows. And just staying with the Oxygen Addict podcast, I listened to his episode 437 last week, and basically he was talking about tackling the unexpected, a comprehensive guide to triathlon troubleshooting, which I thought was really good. So that's it for now. Time for the main event. Hope you enjoy Craig's story, and we shall see you on the other side. Welcome along to AMP, and thank you ever so much for taking your time out to do this, because it's much appreciated. But if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, not a problem. So, likewise, nice to meet you, and thanks for having me on. So, my name is Craig Blaine. I'm from Hull in East Yorkshire. So, currently, what I do now, I'm an age group triathlete. I'm also a professional coach. So, I have two businesses. So, one of those is actually triathlon coaching, where I coach athletes all around the world, online, obviously. And the other business is health coaching. So, I do like in workplace health coaching, biometric blood screening, body composition, etc., and try and find like underlying health conditions within workforce to try and help them basically in the future. But obviously, it's an investment for the company to help save them money, etc. So that's my two businesses which I do. I also volunteer and founded my own triathlon club called Humber Triathletes, which is actually 10 years old this year. It's coming October, so that's quite exciting. So that's from a volunteer basis, and we also put events on, so quite involved with it. So I've actually managed to turn kind of triathlon and coaching into a living based off my kind of like sports background in triathlon. It is kind of full on, but I think it's like what I say to most of my athletes. I mean, looking at most professional people, we are all time poor, but it's how we manage it, making sure that we plan things and stuff, and just learning to say no to a few things once in a while does help, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. As we know, mental well-being is becoming more and more prevalent, isn't it, in society? So I think a lot more people are more and more aware of it, and you've got to take time out for yourself. So yeah, and I think sport is a great way of doing that, and training.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, like I said, one of my roles is like health and well-being coach, and one thing I'm really big in it is promoting mental well-being. Sport, exercise in general is a great way of letting off a little bit of steam. It's great for social connectivity. As you know, we lacked that throughout the pandemic, and that caused a lot of problems because we are social animals and we should be interacting with each other. So, like the triathlon club that I run and the sport in general is really, really good for that. So yeah, that's why I feel it's really important for the community, especially the community of Hull, that we keep going and bring people together, because it is great, like you say.
Yeah, cool. So let's get into your background then. What did you do growing up as a kid, and how did you get into multi-sport?
So background as a kid, so didn't do sport whatsoever. I hated sport with a passion. The reason being is, if people are not aware, Hull is very, very much a rugby town. It is. We've got two rugby teams here, one in the east, one in the west. And because of that, my school was a big kind of rugby school. In fact, the head PE teacher was a former GB international. Jed Dunn, we also played for Hull Kingston Rovers. So as you can imagine, every single PE lesson was rugby. You went in the pool and they wanted to play rugby. You went on the field, they wanted to play rugby. And I'm a small guy, and I mean, put things in perspective. 7 people in my class alone signed for an academy. One of those went off to be a professional and being known as one of the hardest men in rugby, and it was not pleasant. I hated it. So PE, I really got put off, and I was probably the stereotypical kid that, albeit played out a lot, I was more into gaming, more into my PlayStation and things like that, and never really kind of got into sport whatsoever. It wasn't until I was actually in my early 30s when I actually picked up the sport, and this was due to health reasons. So going back a bit, leaving school, I was kind of didn't do well in my GCSEs whatsoever. Really, really poorly. I was kind of wasn't that I didn't apply myself. I just didn't do well. Later, actually finding out I had dyslexia when I went to university, and it was picked up. So it just wasn't picked up back then. So I ended up going into painting and decorating. I was told to go and work with my hands. I didn't have it academically, so I followed the school's advice and started with a painting and decorating apprenticeship with a local company in the area. And that then eventually led to having my own business, which became very, very successful. Um, with that success, obviously came a lot of stress, became kind of hard to manage. I was working 12-hour days. I was working pretty much every weekend, coming home on the evening, then pricing up work or doing paperwork or doing salaries. And basically, it just took up all my time trying to kind of keep ahead of how busy we were. Um, what was happening with that time, I was kind of neglecting my own health and well-being myself. And I got to 15 and a half stone. I mean, for a guy of my physique, my bone structure, 15 and a half stone is big. And I was also kind of like drinking most evenings, having a couple of whiskeys when I got back. It was kind of my time. Eventually, this led to me getting lots of kind of acid reflux problems, etc., etc. And I visited the doctors, and they sent me down for an endoscopy, which they then found this pre-cancerous condition called Barrett's esophagus. So I have 6 centimeters, or I did have 6 centimeters of this affected esophagus, which has a higher chance of obviously turning cancerous. So I had to have a come down every year. I was advised to lose weight to basically clean up my act. So which I did. I have a bit of an epiphany, and it was then I then decided, oh look, I need to start looking after myself. So kind of started reflecting on my lifestyle, started scaling back a little bit in terms of my my workload. Took on a couple more employees to help. Started taking medication, and then joined the local gym. And at the time, I was living on the outskirts of Hull in one of the West Hull villages, so gyms were few and far between. Ironically, it was a gym which was based at the rugby club. But then I kind of joined there, and that's when I then kind of like started to lose weight, and basically start looking after myself. So it was a bit of a frightening experience, as you can imagine, and waiting for 2 weeks while the biopsy came back, but it came back as all clear. And obviously, I just need to manage it. It is one of those things that can be managed with lifestyle and keeping the weight down. So that's kind of like how I got into my footstep within sport later on in life, I guess.
It's sometimes a scare in life that makes you, like you've done, reflect and assess where you are at that point. And you know, sometimes we need it, don't we? You know, as bad as it seems at the time, you know, it then sets you on the right path. So what happened after you joined the gym? You were getting fitter and you were losing weight. What was the next step?
One thing that I always remember is my first time I stepped foot in the gym, and the guy who ran the gym with his brother. There was a couple of like really kind of like stocky lads, really really like donned in tattoos, muscular, very alpha male type people, lovely lads, but very kind of like alpha male. And stepped through the gym on my introduction, and they said this was introduced as the ladies. This is the ladies' gym. This is where all the cardio equipment were. There was a few lighter dumbbells, and I thought, right, okay. And then we then stepped foot into the back half of the gym. They said, oh, this is the man's gym, and I had a look around, and I'll be quite honest, back then I kind of looked at the smallest weight, and I thought, there's no way I could even lift that. There's no chance, and it did get me thinking, like, does that mean I'm not a man? You know, it was kind of like, when I think back, it was probably not the best of practice, really. And I kind of like got in there, and I was using the cardio equipment, was using a few of the lighter weights, but I really didn't like the kind of like alpha male environment whatsoever. What I did like was some of the classes, spin classes, and I got more into those. And when I track back and look at my weight, I think it took me around the best part of 6, 7 months to lose around 3 or 4 stone. So it was coming off, and I was like then getting invested with my diet and getting invested with like better elements of my life, like better sleep hygiene, and just kind of learning to take the weekends off and relax a little bit more. So it was all kind of coming together. I guess my first kind of step into events were doing a half marathon.
Right.
Someone mentioned they was going to do a half marathon, so I thought that was a great idea. It was in 6 weeks. I'd kind of like probably ran around a kilometre in a warm up until that point, so I didn't have a lot of time to turn it around. So I entered that and I finished that, and I remember the time actually just going over the 2 hour mark. The last kind of 3 or 4 kilometers was absolutely excruciating pain. Like, obviously I totally undertrained for it at the time, but I got it done, and I absolutely loved that. That was great. After that, one of the other members had mentioned about doing Spartan, so I entered the Spartan event. Did really well in that. I actually came second overall, and I was really, really, really surprised by that. And it was from that point where I kind of like knew that I really like enjoyed the outdoor sport side of things, rather than stuck inside the gym lifting weights. So it was kind of like, yeah, I was like looking for other opportunities, and it was actually my brother-in-law from my ex-wife at the time. So he was saying, look, he's going to be doing a triathlon, and this was going to be in the October time. So put things in perspective, I started the gym the March, May time, and I'd entered my first triathlon the October. So this was 2012. So it was obviously the year that Brownlee had really kind of like boosted the sport, and kind of felt inspired by him. And so I went and did my first triathlon. And by the October, I'd lost 5.5 stone by that point. I knew how to swim front crawl, but I wasn't great at it. So I kind of retaught myself that. I got myself a second-hand Cannondale off eBay. And obviously doing the running. I kind of like just doing a bit of training with my brother-in-law, and yeah, just kind of got ready for that first event, really. So that was like the October 2012, and that was my first time doing triathlon. It was like a pool-based 33-meter pool, which is no longer there, unfortunately. Really, really hilly bike ride. It went to the Yorkshire Wolds, just dipped its toe into it. Absolutely loved it. And it was from that point I actually got hooked on the sport. And that was my first taste. So yeah, and from that point, the event organizer actually had a local race team. So I approached him afterwards and said, look, how do I get more involved? So I joined the local race team, and that was like my first kind of taste of, I would say, a club environment, but it wasn't. It was more like a select 10 people, really. So that was when I really started like getting into the sport from that point.
Yeah. So when you say race team, Craig,
yeah,
was that triathlon race team?
It was, yeah. So it's a triathlon race team. So it had 2 or 3 junior athletes in there, one of which I've been recently coaching. It had a couple of us, which was also dip the toe in pentathlon. One of the pentathlon excellence centres is not too far from here. Actually, I we'll get into this a bit later. I actually ended up working for those guys a little while because it was based at the university I went to. But yeah, it was like a mix really of male, female athletes, some doing Ironman, some doing some GB age group racing, and some just obviously participation really. But you had to have like a certain standard to get into the race team. So we had to have like a certain times, certain aspirations. I remember filling in this kind of like 12-page document of what I wanted to achieve from the sport. When I kind of think back, a bit bizarre really. Yeah, it was like applying for a job. It is very heavy, but yeah, I managed to kind of get in the team, and that's when I first started kind of, yeah, like taking it a little bit more seriously, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of like going from doing nothing, from then getting this diagnosis, and then from the March to the October, kind of like, yeah, getting fit enough and losing 5.5 stone to this event. So it was a bit of a whirlwind entry into the sport, but it was yeah, it was needed, I guess, for my own health. So that's kind of like where it started. We then kind of started training, and there was a guy called Tim, and he was actually going to be doing Alton Park Duathlon in the following March. So this will be March 2013. And he said, look, it's a good idea to enter an event, because what it does, it helps build motivation over the winter months. Nobody wants to train, but if you know you've got this on the horizon, it's worth bearing in mind. So I thought, you know what, let's have a go at it. So I entered the event. He said he was going to go try and get a GB age group qualification time there. I thought it was absolutely bizarre that you could represent your country as an amateur. Didn't think nothing of it. He said, look, there's no chance you're going to qualify whatsoever, but just go. Just bear in mind that it is going to be competitive. But like I said, just use it as an event, and we'll go together as a little team. So that's what I'd set about doing. Trained really, really hard for the winter months. I decided to upgrade the bike, and I bought myself my first proper triathlon bike again, another Cannondale. Absolutely loved that bike. Trained really, really hard, and suddenly found out I was becoming quite a fast runner for someone who's never done sport, never ran as a kid or anything like that. Becoming what I thought was quite natural to myself, which was quite good. But yeah, went to this event, and for some reason in the back of my mind, I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to pay that 10 quid and just put my name down. I'm just going to register. I don't know why I wanted to do it. I just thought I'm going to, just in case. And actually I ended up coming fourth and getting the automatic qualification slot. So my second race ever, I actually got this kind of like GB qualification, and it was just like, this is crazy what is happening.
That's amazing.
So yeah. So I was like really happy with myself, and all the hard work was paying off. And there's something you might learn throughout this podcast is like, by no means I'm talented at anything, but hard work will always get me where I need to be. And I've kind of like always follow that mantra, is like, if you work hard for something, you will get it. Yeah. So yeah, that was, it was crazy that was happening. So my actual third race ever was actually in a GB strip in Horst, Holland. So it was like, wow, this is crazy. So yeah, that was kind of how I got into the sport, and obviously I will become like a GB age grouper. And then from that point, things have just gone crazy, really. Yeah.
Sure. So just going back to, you said you'd put your tenner in. Did your mate explain what you had to do and everything to do that? Because it's not as straightforward. I've had this conversation recently with the last guy who was on the podcast, Robert, that, it's a bit bizarre how, like you said, how it all works off, that you can actually represent your country at age group. But did he tell you how you had to apply, basically? Because it's a bit confusing.
No, it didn't actually. It was kind of one of those things. I mean, at the time, Tim was also he's got the nickname as Ironman Tim, so like that's the thing. He was actually training for an Ironman as the bigger picture. So a lot of the training was like only swims together or a bit of speed work midweek. Like on the weekends, we didn't do the same training because he was up doing his Ironman sessions, whereas I was doing the short stuff on my own. And so no, it didn't get explained. It was kind of, I just looked into it, just read on the website and things like that, did a little bit of research, and kind of just figured it out that way. And it wasn't until around 4 o'clock the night before, so it was like the cut-off on the Friday, or the 2 nights before. So yeah, it was literally an hour before the cut-off. I just thought, you know what, it's £10, it's worth it. So yeah, now to the research. And I think, like I said, that is the difficult part of understanding how you do qualify. And again, it's something I do advise myself now because I know how difficult it is. And recently, an athlete which I've been involved with actually had forgot to book the place, and they qualified and they didn't go because of that subsequently.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like they are quite strict on it as well,
Yeah.
yeah, so. But yeah, it's just bizarre that at the time learning that, yeah, I'd come from nothing to that.
Yeah.
It was an eye opener, that's for sure.
Yeah. And had you looked at anybody else around your age group, what they were doing before you'd decided to enter, like times wise, to give you a gauge to see whether you were up there close?
Yeah, yeah. So within that qualification event, and I've still got the picture. There's a person straight in front of me in my age group, uh, called John Paul Bednerick, and it was quite funny because I think oh, I'd say for a good couple of years, me and him was like literally neck and neck every single race, and like I always used to look see if he was on it and sigh, like, oh God, we're in for a tough, we're in for a tough day today, and yeah, it's quite funny because albeit I think he's more invested in his kids now. His kids are quite talented with cycling, and he doesn't do it so much himself. We are still kind of like friends on social media, and I see what he's up to and things like that. But yeah, I always used to see his name and think, oh, here we go. And yeah, it was kind of like secret train from each other, I guess. And like, yeah, I blocked him off Strava and things like that. So it was like, it
Oh,
did get a little bit
serious.
competitive. Yeah, it did got a little bit more serious. And yeah, I guess that's how we go sometimes. But yeah, ironically, I'm not even on Strava anymore. Like, yeah, I find it quite a negative tool because of how I used to get in the past, I guess. Yeah, yeah. So it was it got like that. I guess that is sport. I guess it is competitive, isn't it? So
Yeah,
yeah,
sure is.
yeah,
Yeah, cool. So after you'd qualified and you'd done your first race, what did you think to the whole experience and what was next?
yeah. That race in particular paved the whole way for the next 10 years of my life. In a sense that, so we did the event, didn't come anywhere near the podium, but it was kind of like, it was bizarre, big eye opener. Um, Sir James Cracknell was in the event as well. So if you
All
watch the
right.
documentary, it was in Horst in Holland, and it actually it was a part of his comeback race after he'd had the brain injury and things like that. So it was part of his rehabilitation. So it was kind of really bizarre, like sharing it with these people. I remember Lucy Gossage being at the event and winning the elite race and things like that. So it was like being a part of this and walking down with the flags and things like that. It was kind of like a humbling experience, and it was absolutely fantastic. Obviously, moving forwards, I wanted to continue to represent Great Britain, and my triathlon and my swimming in particular was getting stronger. So it was like, let's have a go at the sprint distances and things like that. But from a personal perspective, how that race changed my life, actually going back around a month before that event, unfortunately, the race team who I was representing, that he'd actually filed bankruptcy. He'd run the local marathon, and I think it didn't go quite well, and he'd lost a lot of money. And we got a little bit of sponsorship. Myself and my brother-in-law had also qualified. This money had to go through the club account for us to get hold of it. So obviously, it was all above board for the company giving us in it, and so I was stuck with this check and for nowhere for it to go. So myself and my brother-in-law had actually gone into Barclays Bank, and we'd opened up a we actually lied to him. We said, "Oh yeah, we're starting up a triathlon club called Humber Triathletes, and we put this money through so we could then get it to then get across to Holland and pay for accommodation and things like that." So we kind of like had this kind of like bank account in a name of Humber Triathletes just so we could get funded, and it's in a way we could get our hands on the money that they give us. So it was on that evening we had a couple of beers just celebrating, and we actually thought, you know what, if this guy who was running the club was having to close up because of his financial situation, maybe we should perhaps start Humber Triathletes and make a go of it. And that
Yeah.
was where the seed was planted.
Right.
So when we actually then got back, we then decided to make a go of it. So obviously still training for triathlon, but we also put out there that we was going to start in a triathlon club. So this was kind of the March, April time. The club actually opened on the 1st of October of 2013. So obviously that's the 10-year anniversary coming up. That's where my career started by default in coaching. My brother-in-law at the time, he said, look, I'll do all the paperwork, I'll do all the websites, I'll do all this kind of stuff. And I said, okay, well, I'll sort the coaching side of things. And so I got enrolled on my first level 1 triathlon badges, and kind of the rest of that is then history, I guess. Moving on to kind of like, the sport. To date, I've kind of qualified for, I think, 13 or 14 events, and then I've kind of attended 8 or 9 of them due to funding.
Sure.
So that's covering sprint and standard distance duathlon, sprint, triathlon. I had qualified for 70.3 middle distance, but because of the pandemic, I didn't end up going. So yeah, I've kind of done a lot of the distances. In fact, one of my long-term goals is to actually do every single distance for GB. Yeah, so that's something I wouldn't mind completing. From that kind of event, like I say, the triathlon got more and more involved. I was getting more and more competitive. I started winning kind of like regional events, podium national events and things like that. Never been like uber competitive, but I guess my training age is still very young at 10 years, I guess. Even though I've started later on in life, it's still very young. But yeah, I got to a good point where I'm very happy with it, I guess. In terms of my kind of coaching background, that's where it then kind of progressed. And I'm at the point now where I now do this for a living. I quit the paint and decorating. I give the business away to my employees. I've then built up my qualifications, level 1, level 2, level 3. I was on the second ever level 3 course of the high performance pathway. And then I also did a degree. Like I mentioned earlier, this is where we found out where I was dyslexic, which answered a lot of questions for me, like why I did poorly in school. It just wasn't picked up on back then.
I bet you was a relief, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was in relief. Yeah. I remember my mum and my stepdad always telling me the story that when I was at primary school, I used to bring back a tobacco tin. And in that tobacco tin used to have cards in it, and it was pictures, and you had to match up the words to the pictures. And you then got tested on it on the Monday morning. And until you got them all right, you used to bring back the same tin. And they told me a story that like they used to open it with excitement, hoping that I'd moved on. And it was the same pictures and the same words every single week. And there's like, oh God, here we go again. And like, yeah, I guess thinking back, obviously they didn't realize either. So yeah, it was a relief, but it also answered a lot of questions in terms of stuff. Like, for instance, the triathlon club's colours are bright orange. As you know, men are really like poor at picking like products for like hair and body. I just go straight for the bright orange L'Oreal stuff and things like that. I'm really attracted to this colour. And my dyslexia is actually what I call visual stress syndrome, and orange in the spectrum overexcites my eyes. And I have to wear, when I read and write, like kids have the acetone, I have these orange filtered glasses, and that's what enables me to read and write properly. It was like, hang on a minute, like this now all makes sense, you know. And it was like, yeah, it's a strange kind of thing to have. But one thing I did say is like they offered me like a 10% discrepancy, like on all my markings, and I actually said, no chance, I don't want it. I need to figure out a way around this. I need to figure out how I'm gonna. So I don't get a 10% discrepancy on life. You know, we've got to figure out our own way. So what I found out is my brain doesn't kind of like log words like most people's brains. Like I don't have the ability to break down syllables, put it back together, and put it in my brain and read it. So these long physiological words, which I was learning at university, I had to like simply, the best way of how my dyslexia works is I recognize words like I recognize shapes. So I just keep writing it down and label it next to what it actually was, and then just keep reading it until my brain recognized it like a shape, and then that's how I kind of got over it. So as you can imagine, the long physiological words to do with the anatomy of the body and biology and all these things to do with sports science, quite difficult thing to do, but it also made sure that was more applied, I guess. Yeah, so that's kind of like how I then, from that point on, is wanted to make a career of this. So yeah, it's been quite an epiphany from that first triathlon, as you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what a journey! What a journey to
Yeah,
be
definitely.
to be
Yeah,
to be where you are, and actually what you're doing as a career. You know, it's not just
yeah,
from a sporting and a health background, but from an educational background as well. It's like two pronged, isn't it, that you've had to deal with? So, yeah, well done.
yeah. No, it is an amazing thing, and like with the health side of things, again, that happened by default. I'd actually started up my coaching business, and I ended up hiring a room in one of the local gyms, and he's also got physiotherapy in there and hydrotherapy and all these kind of things going on. And he had some equipment in there, some VO2 max machines, some lactate blood testing, watt bikes, etc., etc. So I based up like a physiological testing lab within there, and I wasn't picking up a great deal of work. So he actually said, "Oh, look, I do this thing in London where we go and help screen people for an insurance company, and would I want to go?" And so, yeah, I started doing a couple of days a week doing that. And it was a really, really good subsidy. It meant that I didn't solely rely just on coaching. Unfortunately, coaching athletes do come and go.
Mhm.
You can't be too disheartened when that happens, because it happens. It's like personal training. I always say the most successful personal trainers are the ones who are working on the next set of athletes, as well as the ones they've got. Always be ahead of that. So yeah, it was a good little earner at the time, and I guess that's just kind of evolved. That kind of work did stop in the pandemic, so I ended up getting a job with the NHS as a health and wellbeing coach, and myself and the colleague who I started with was one of the first in the country to start doing that. We got really, really great success. On average, I put like 70 people in diabetes remission every year. Got some great results. People with pregnancy ended up working with transgender females so they can get the final operation. So it was a real kind of like mix of work. But unfortunately, I find the NHS is more reactive than proactive. And this is why I've then gone back into and setting up my own business of actually doing the health screening to have this more proactive approach. Because if
Yeah,
I'd have been more proactive with my life, I wouldn't have got to where I was with the
yeah,
Barrett's esophagus, you know. So
yeah. I think you're right.
uh,
I think the medical profession, and it's no fault of their own. I think it's just the way it always has been. They don't. They treat the symptoms, don't they? Rather than actually, if we looked at society as a whole and looked at what we're all doing wrong, like
yes,
i.e., putting shit in our bodies from
yes,
a food point of view, that's where it all stems from. You know, if
it does. Um, Unfortunately, the NHS is on its knees. It is.
yeah,
I don't believe it's a true health service. I believe it's a too late service. I honestly believe what I'm doing and the others doing is the true health service. Because if I can take someone's blood and say, "Oh, actually, you've got pre-diabetes here. Let's look to lose some weight and watch your carbohydrate intake and actually prevent that from developing into type 2 diabetes," then it then saves the NHS a lot of money down the line. Diabetics are one of the only illnesses where you get free medication and things like that. But it's actually, oh no, you've got a little bit of a high visceral fat here. Maybe if we reduce this and do that, we're going to avoid this. And if the NHS did that, I honestly believe they would save a hell of a lot more money down the line. But this is something I also apply to my athletes, is if we can be more kind of proactive than reactive. If you can, like, instead of having to then go and see a physiotherapist and then do rehabilitation because you're injured, actually if you did some work towards that, wouldn't get to that point. Now, don't get me wrong, within sport, we do get injuries. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. In actual fact, one of my athletes has just got injured just by wearing carbon shoes without warming up properly. And no fault of her own. She wasn't to know. But likewise, as a distance coach, I wasn't to know she was going to put them on either. But it's something we've now learned that actually let's get warmed up, and that's just her biomechanics, and it was after a big training load. So sometimes it can't be helped. But if we can do as much as we can, prepare, sleep properly,
yeah,
recover properly, we can avoid all these things and be more consistent. And it goes with our health as well. So you are right. Yeah. Like actually, if we looked after ourselves a little bit more,
mm,
I would have never had this Barrett's esophagus. Now, this is a condition I'm going to have to live with the rest of my life, but I've actually halved it now. Cells regenerate in your body. So it's gone from 6 centimeters to 3 centimeters. And I'll be honest, I'm supposed to be taking medication every day, but I very rarely do. I only take it if I get symptoms, because I feel I'm managing it well with my lifestyle, with my
Yeah.
clean diet, and keeping my weight down. And I very rarely do get symptoms. So it's only sometimes where I've had maybe eaten out and maybe just overindulged, which we do once in a while. Like I say, I'll take the medication. It just helps it, you know. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's certainly an approach which I take now in life for sure. In terms of like along that journey, what I was kind of like found the most bizarre was actually picking up some awards from the Triathlon Federation for the coaching at the club. So along there, like the club had actually won best club in the region. We put on some events and we won the best event.
Yeah.
In the whole of the nation with the whole triathlon, which was an amazing event, and then picking up kind of like free coaching awards as well for the best coach and things like that, which was really kind of bizarre for me. Because I just didn't expect it at all. You know, I did this because I wanted people not to make the mistakes I did. Um, I guess that as a kid, when I look back, I didn't. It's not that I didn't have the opportunities. I just probably didn't look hard enough for them.
Mm.
Like I mentioned, I think maybe the opportunities I only saw was rugby, and I hated the sport. Like I still dislike it now, and it's like yeah. So it was. This is why I do what I do, and yeah. So it's a good thing that there is opportunity out there, and I provide it for people, and this is why I do it, not because I want that recognition whatsoever. So it was humbling, but yeah, it was also yeah. I guess my point to this bit is just to make sure that there is opportunity out there and people realizing that you can get what you want, and if you work hard you will get it, you know. And not everyone is talented, like you say, but if you do work hard and be consistent and do all the right things, do all the small things right, you will get there.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and that doesn't just mean for triathlon, it also for your well-being as well, for your health and for your mental well-being, you know. Yeah, that's probably why I said that, is just yeah, they know there is opportunity out there, and there is help if you need it as well. So
Sure. 100%. 100%. You've got to look for these things. They're not just going to come and present themselves. And I think it's also about surrounding yourself with the like-minded people also to
yeah,
help. And,
yeah,
your hard work's paid off, Craig. So, you know, you've put your all into it and you've got the
yeah,
just reward. So, chapeau, as the cyclists say, it's
yeah,
well deserved.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, cool.
yeah, definitely.
We'll move on to the quick fire round questions. Just a
Yeah,
few just to finish off. And the
yeah.
first one is, what's your favourite bit of kit?
Oh, it's got to be one of my bikes for sure. 100% one of my bikes. Like, yeah,
Most
yeah,
common answer.
yeah, definitely. I just love. That's the thing. It's the one sport. Like, it's probably the most faff to actually do. But I actually call my bike my therapist. You know, if I'm stressed and I'm a little bit overwhelmed with everything what's going on, you know, if I just get on my bike and get out there, like I just come back and I feel brand new physically and mentally. Oh yeah, beat up a little bit physically, but from a mental perspective, it's just refreshing. And so yeah, I would choose my bike all day long.
Yeah.
But actually going out and biking, which one I couldn't tell you. You know, I've got five bikes, so
Yeah,
I couldn't. It's like saying which is your favorite child. You couldn't answer that, could you? Right?
you're right. You're right. I like that. Just give us a bit of a lowdown on a week of training. What would you at the moment where you're at? What would your training consist of?
Yeah. So at the minute, I'm training for Challenge Roth. So I've got Challenge
Right.
Roth in like 4 or 5 weeks' time. So 5 or 6 weeks now, looking at it. So I've got like a 4 week block just starting this week. I've actually just done Xterra at the weekend.
Yeah, I
So
saw that, and I didn't even realise my wife had put in for the duathlon, which was
yeah,
an age
qualifier,
group
yeah, the day after.
the day after,
Yeah,
and I had no
yeah,
idea that Xterra was going on. So we rocked
yeah,
up in the evening, and
yeah,
like we just got there, we just parked up because we'd got into a campsite which was a bit further up. And
yeah,
but they weren't letting us let us go on that because Xterra was still going on, and we just got there,
yeah,
and Ali Brownlee was getting presented with his winning
Yeah,
medal and trophy and stuff. And there was
yeah,
a few other guys that had actually been on the podcast that I wasn't aware that were there either. So it was so bizarre how it worked out.
yeah.
But a great
Well, it was
event.
absolutely fantastic event, well organised. Admittedly, I hadn't trained for it. You know, I've got a mountain bike and I've been on it for 6 weeks. It wasn't part of the bigger picture this year. It was just I just wanted to try it, dip my toe in it. I've been doing the sport for 10 years and I keep on keeping it fresh. So I thought I'm going to try it. And like I mentioned, one of my goals is to represent GB as an age grouper in every single distance. And so obviously cross triathlon is one of them. So obviously in the back of my mind, it's there. But I just wanted to do it, just zero expectations and yeah, just have fun, which I did. It was brutal. Unfortunately, fitness, like I can push watts all day long, but it's that technical bike course. Like it's so hard to keep speed momentum because you're just losing it with the technical side of things. But really, really, really good fun. And like I always think events are a really, really good boost to fitness. So and it's just great practice and putting it all together. And so that's going to help. Back to your question, what does my training look like? So I'm averaging around 15 hours a week at the moment. So fortunately, with my work, I do add in there my training. So I've had 2 or 3 days recovery, just easy sessions and things like that. But this week I'm actually doing. So yesterday I did the Ironman swim. Today I'm going on a 32-kilometer run. 34-kilometer run. Just as I'm finished with this podcast, and then tomorrow I'm covering the bike distance and then doing a brick session. I'm going to cover the whole distance over the 3 days. Saturday I'm doing just an easy swim, like a bit of recovery on the morning. Then I'm actually having the rest of the weekend off. I'm off to Outlaw Half to go and support my club and my athletes that I coach, which is something I do every year. So that's kind of like what this week looks like. And then kind of moving forwards, we've got kind of like 2 or 3 weeks of like really specific kind of work for Challenge Roth. So I'm obviously going to be just kind of like practicing my power for the day and just kind of do it in interval sessions, some bricks off there, pause run that I do off there. And just kind of like just fine tweaking everything now. After this weekend, that'll be the peak weekend leading up to the event. All the training's in the bag now, so it's a case of just making sure I'm wrapped up in cotton wool and doing all the small things right, just making sure I get to race day fit and healthy and ready to go. Cool. Again, this is my first full distance event, so all going in there, zero expectations. In the back of my mind, I've got a time I'd like to kind of do, but it's something I've not shared because, like I said, if I don't achieve that, I'll look a fool. But I just want to go and enjoy it. And then I'm doing Ironman Wales in September. That's something I want to take a little bit more seriously. So let's just get to Challenge Roth, enjoy for what it is, take a lot of learnings from it, and then kind of apply it to like a proper campaign towards Ironman Wales. So yeah, but in short, 15 hours a week, really. 50% of that is bike, 30% run, the rest is swim and gym.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. What resources do you use? Could be books, could be videos, websites, podcasts.
Yeah, a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Some of my work takes me out of town. Some of my contracts. So like next week, for instance, I'm in Newcastle, so I'm going to be in the car for 2.5 hours. So I listen to a lot of podcasts on there. I am a massive fanboy of the sport. This year, in particular, with Ali and Jan coming back together, you know, I'm like absolutely buzzing for this. And with all the new athletes in the mix as well. So like I've been listening to a lot of those. In terms of resources, one of the best resources that I like is actually the Training Peaks articles that get put out there. So if you're a Training Peaks coach, you get some of the articles, and they're great because for me, being dyslexic, like if I go reading pages and pages, I just get kind of lost with it a little bit. So like the shorter articles are better for me. YouTube, I love YouTube. You know, it's just one of those things. It's a little 10-minute video here and there. Quite good time wise, and you know, watching them while you train or just like chilling out in the night. So
yeah,
I guess yeah.
Any particular podcast you want to give a shout out to?
Well, it's obviously yours because it's I like to the stories of fellow athletes as well and things like that. One that I really, really love. I love the Triathlon Mockery.
They are good.
They're funny and it's light-hearted humour. one thing that me and my friends love is we love a bit of banter. Like we're always sending each other memes online and stuff like that. In particular, the triathlon memes. Like it's really, really kind of funny, and it's just the lighter side of things.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can be a bit samey, repeating the same news. In fact, like one of them I've stopped listening to because all they're doing is just repeating what they've heard off another podcast.
Right.
They do refer to that podcast, to be fair to them, but it's just like, I've heard this. Like, what's the point of listening again? So yeah, but the reason I like yours is because it's something different. It's you're hearing of other athletes, you know, it's not the elites and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess they're the two main ones.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks for the support. Yeah, much
No,
appreciated.
you're welcome.
What advice would you give? I mean, from your coaching perspective and also personal perspective, what advice would you give anybody wanting to get into multi-sport and anybody who would like to qualify for age group?
I guess just set your goal and just embrace it. I've got lots and lots of new athletes who are just like dipping their toe into multi-sport at the club at the minute. Likewise, I've got athletes who are good enough or already are at age group level. In fact, a couple of those have then gone on to be elites as well. So it's kind of like coaching across the whole spectrum, and it's just embrace the experience and don't let it put you off. Unfortunately, what you'll find with new athletes, they get kind of like put off by the swim. The swim's the big one, and one of the biggest words of advice is like, I wish I could go back and I actually envy those people going through that. I've done something like over 90 triathlons or duathlons now, and very rarely on the last kind of couple of years I've actually got any excitement at the beginning of that race. It isn't until I'm like halfway through the bike I'm actually let's go for it now, because you get used to that racing, whereas they're absolutely petrified. And I actually find like doing things like Xterra, and the biggest one recently was doing the escape from Alcatraz. Like I got this absolute thrill and buzz, and just embrace that, and it's natural to feel that way, and use it as energy rather than negative, But there is things out there. People are wanting to. One of the best things is Go Try. We put Go Try on bi-monthly. A very, very short distance duathlon. It's on the cycle track. There's no traffic. There's no expectations. Like people turn up on the shoppers. People turn up on all sorts of bikes. No expectations whatsoever. And that is like one of the best things you could go and do if it's something you're thinking about. It's a great natural progression from perhaps maybe doing your first park run and then dipping the toe into that. So there's lots and lots of things out there if that's what you want to do,
Yeah, great advice. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a buzz. I mean, it's more of a buzz when you've finished it, than nerves to kick in. I always say that, you should be nervous at the beginning. If you're not nervous, then you don't care. You know what I mean? It's not, you've worked for it. You need those nerves to get you going. And, if you're competitive, you'll have those, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of like, I use the analogy that like racing is a bit like a drug, I guess. Like the very first one, like that hit was always the best, and then afterwards you're then chasing that first hit, and it got, for me personally, it got to a point where it was like I wasn't getting anything from it, and that's why I then started dipping my toe in like different kind of like races, in particular around the world, like Escape from Alcatraz was something I just wanted for the absolute thrill of it. And like I said, Xterra, and I'm actually getting these same feelings for Challenger Off. So I'm at a point now where I'm happy with how the career in triathlon has gone so far, but I'm now doing the events which are really taking my fancy.
Yeah.
So like next year, I'm hoping to maybe do Alpe d'Huez or something like that, just to keep stepping it up and keep that thrill alive, I guess,
Yeah, sure. And that brings us to the final question. What's your, I guess we've covered your short-term goals this year, and what's your longer-term goals?
My long-term goal, I mentioned it a couple of times, would be to do every single distance available for Team GB. I don't know if anybody else has done that. By no means. I think because of the way my life is, I can't put everything into being that competitive for podium. I just don't think I could do that. It'd be like my life is quite busy, and I feel as I'm doing enough. And could I really put 15 hours into chasing a sprint triathlon podium? Me mentally couldn't do that. But I think actually representing and getting that thing where you've covered every single distance for Team GB is definitely a goal of mine. But the biggest goal is just to keep enjoying it. You know,
Yeah.
the day I don't enjoy it anymore is obviously the day I walk away from it, and this is obviously why I get involved with the coaching side of things and stuff like that, and it's because I absolutely love the sport. I'm yeah, it's probably like a bit cliche. Like I am a proper big fan of it, and like my fiance, like she even on her phone, like she's Craig the triathlon guy, literally. Like that's what I'm labeled as, and it's kind of like um, that's got to keep going for me. Just keeping happy within the sport because if I wasn't happy, I won't be doing it. Simple as that. And I guess that's a message as well for athletes is like you got to enjoy this. If it becomes a chore, if you start resenting family or your job because of it, you need to have a serious look at yourself and just rein things back and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. Wise words. Yeah. And I guess to your point about at this moment in time where you are in your career and your life, you're not able to put time into attaining podium, gold medal.
Mm-hmm.
There's time for that. Age group goes on and on and on, doesn't it? And I think that's,
Sure.
all right, maybe not now, but you have that mindset down the line when you're retired, things ease off in life, then you go again, don't you? And you can do
that's it. That's it. And it's like I mentioned earlier, like I've got, albeit I'm 44, I believe I've still got, because I've not trained as a kid all the way through and things like that. I've got a very young training life. So yeah, I believe I've got years left in me for sure. And distances will get shorter over time. I honestly don't believe my body could cope for. I mean, I'm struggling now doing these Ironman training. It's tough. Like it is tough. There's no denying that. And so yeah, going back to the short stuff. But for me, it's like just doing these iconic events at the moment and doing as many as those, and then obviously dipping my toe in the GB stuff. Look, the beauty is I don't have to do qualifying events with the longer distance. As long as I post a good time, I can get a slot like I did with the 70.3. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, that event didn't go ahead. It just didn't work when it finally did for my personal lifestyle. So it's a shame, but it will be a box that will get ticked in the near distance future, that's for sure.
Cool. And I think the final thing is, do you just want to give your business a plug where people can find you on Instagram or, all the other social medias, and your club a plug and,
Yeah. So in terms of social media, so I'm under Coach Craig Try. So it's Coach_Craig_Try TRI on Instagram. I've also just started putting out some YouTube videos. So again, under the same name, at Coach Craig Try or Coach Craig Performance Coaching. If you're in the East Yorkshire area, Humber Triathletes is our club. One thing I am proud of is that we are the only club in the area that does put on coach sessions. So that's something. So you do actually get trained and things like that. You have to actually get your coach sessions each week rather than just a social environment. We do also have a social environment as well, so it's got everything. So yeah, that's Humber Triathletes, and both of those can be found online.
Cool. Well, I think that's a great place to land it. It's been a pleasure to meet you and listen to your story. Mostly, I'm sure you're going to inspire people who are going to listen. And thanks very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, if you're not inspired by some of that story, if not all of it, then there must be something wrong with you. I mean, that had, from not doing anything as a child, growing up sporting wise, to becoming a coach and absolutely loving what he's doing, and throw in the mix there cancer, and finding out purely because he went to university that he had dyslexia. Well, it just goes to show you never know where you're going to end up in life and the battles that you're going to go through. And it looks like Craig's dealt with them admirably, and he's got his just rewards. And well done, Craig. Great story. Love chatting to you. And good luck with everything that you're going to go on to do. And that's about it for this episode. And if you'd like to come on and share your story, or if you know anybody who you think should be on, please tell them to get in touch. And you can do that by dropping us an email at agegroupmultisportpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at amp_1967. Just drop us a DM there and get in touch just like Craig did. We're also on Facebook at ampgb. You can do the same there. Just drop us a DM. And you'll find us on Twitter at Agegroup Multisport Podcast. And if you're liking what you hear, please leave us a review, a comment, a rating, because it really does help us get our profile up there, and then that'll get us out to more like-minded people and hopefully inspire other people to take up our wonderful sport. So until the next episode, don't forget, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.